The rain hammered against the glass walls of Sterling Industries' downtown headquarters as Marcus Webb watched the CEO's private elevator doors slide shut. Inside, Victoria Sterling stood mere inches away from him, her Chanel perfume filling the confined space, her eyes fixed on her phone screen as if he were invisible. 3 years of working in the same building, countless elevator rides, and she had never once acknowledged his existence, not even a polite nod. Marcus adjusted his worn messenger bag and stared at the floor numbers climbing. 15, 16, 17. His daughter Emma's school permission slip crinkled in his jacket pocket, still unsigned because he'd been up until 2 in the morning fixing a data breach that had threatened to compromise the entire company's client database. He was the senior systems analyst who kept Sterling Industries running, yet to Victoria, he might as well have been part of the elevator's machinery. The doors opened on the 23rd floor. Victoria swept out without a word, her designer heels clicking authoritatively down the marble corridor. Marcus followed at a distance, heading to his cubicle in the vast open office where he'd spend another day solving problems that would earn other people promotions. Rough night. His colleague Jason swiveled in his chair, taking in Marcus's rumpled shirt and the coffee stain near his collar. Emma had a nightmare about the school play. Took an hour to calm her down. Then the system alerts started coming in. Marcus sank into his chair and powered up his workstation. How's it looking? Like you saved the company about $3 million in potential lawsuits. But don't worry, I'm sure Richard from management will take full credit in this morning's meeting. Marcus managed a tired smile. This was his life now, invisible excellence. Ever since his wife Sarah died 4 years ago, he'd been treading water, keeping his head just above the surface for Emma's sake. The 8-year-old was his entire world, and if that meant being overlooked at work so he could leave at 5 to pick her up from after-school care, so be it. Other people could chase corner offices and executive parking spots. He just wanted to be there when his daughter needed him. The morning crawled by in a blur of code and coffee. At 11, Marcus was summoned to the executive floor, unusual enough that Jason raised his eyebrows meaningfully. Marcus made his way back to those marble corridors, past assistants who looked through him and junior executives who stepped aside without acknowledgement. Victoria's office occupied the building's prime corner, offering panoramic views of the city skyline. Her assistant, a sharp-faced woman named Claire, barely glanced at him. Wait here. Marcus stood in the reception area, studying the awards and magazine covers that documented Victoria Sterling's meteoric rise. At 38, she'd taken her father's mid-sized tech firm and transformed it into an industry giant. Business Insider called her ruthless. Forbes said visionary. The employees had other words, usually spoken in whispers by the water cooler. Mr. Webb. Claire's voice cut through his thoughts. Ms. Sterling will see you now. The office was exactly as he'd imagined. Minimalist, expensive, dominated by a massive desk that seemed designed to intimidate. Victoria sat behind it, still focused on her computer screen. Marcus stood there for a full minute before she finally looked up. The data breach. Her voice was clipped, businesslike. I need to understand exactly what happened and how you fixed it. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus explained the intrusion, the vulnerabilities he'd discovered, and the permanent solutions he'd implemented. Victoria listened with the intensity of a predator, interrupting only to ask technical questions that proved she understood more than most CEOs about her company's infrastructure. Good work, she said finally, in the tone someone might use to praise a well-trained dog. Make sure it doesn't happen again. Actually, I've been trying to get approval for a security upgrade for 6 months. If we don't invest in better, that's not your concern. Your concern is keeping the current systems operational. We have budget priorities that extend beyond IT paranoia. With respect, Ms. Sterling, it's not paranoia when. Thank you, Mr. Webb. That will be all. Dismissed. Again. Marcus walked back to his cubicle feeling the familiar sting of being reduced to nothing. Jason took one look at his face and slid a candy bar across the desk. That bad. She doesn't see people. She sees functions, tools. She sees her bottom line. Heard through the grapevine she's trying to land the Meridian contract. If that happens, we're talking $100 million deal. That's all that matters to her. That afternoon, Marcus left at exactly 5 o'clock, as he always did. Other employees would stay until 7, 8, even 9, trying to impress the executives with their dedication. But Emma would be waiting at Little Star's after-school program, probably working on her art project or reading one of the fantasy novels she devoured with shocking speed. She spotted him the moment he walked through the door, her face lighting up in that way that made every exhausting day worthwhile. "Daddy, look what Mrs. Chen taught me." She held up an origami crane, slightly lopsided but executed with careful determination. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Marcus knelt down so they were eye level. "Ready to go home? Can we go to the park? Please, just for a little while." He should say no. He had laundry waiting, dinner to make, and he desperately needed to sleep. But Emma was looking at him with those hopeful eyes, and he remembered Sarah's voice in his head. "She's only little once, Marcus. Don't miss it." 30 minutes, he agreed, and her delighted squeal made him forget about Victoria Sterling and data breaches and invisible elevator rides. They went to Morrison Park, 3 blocks from their apartment. Emma immediately claimed the swings, pumping her legs with fierce concentration while Marcus stood nearby, watching the way the late afternoon sun caught in her dark hair. She looked so much like Sarah. Same determined chin, same quick smile. "Higher, Daddy." He gave her a gentle push, then another. For those precious moments, the world contracted to just the two of them, and the tightness in his chest eased slightly. "Daddy, that lady is staring at you." Marcus looked up, following Emma's gaze to a woman sitting on a nearby bench. She was striking. Auburn hair, warm brown eyes, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. When their eyes met, she smiled and stood up, walking over with an easy confidence. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare. I just overheard you two talking, and your daughter reminds me so much of myself at that age. Fearless on the swings, she's definitely that." Marcus found himself smiling back. There was something genuine about this woman, something that felt like sunlight after a long winter. "I'm Rachel," she offered her hand. "Rachel Morrison. I just moved to the building across the street, and I'm trying to figure out the neighborhood. Is this park always this perfect?" "Pretty much. I'm Marcus, this is Emma." Emma had stopped swinging and was now studying Rachel with 8-year-old scrutiny. "Do you have kids, Emma?" Marcus said, embarrassed, but Rachel laughed. "It's okay. No kids yet, but I teach 3rd grade at Westside Elementary, so I'm around kids all day." "I'm in 3rd grade." Emma's eyes widened. "Are you going to be my teacher?" "Different school, I'm afraid. But maybe I'll see you at the park sometimes." They talked for 20 minutes, and Marcus felt something unfamiliar, lightness. Rachel was easy to talk to, funny without trying too hard, and she looked at him like he was actually visible. When they finally said goodbye, Emma grabbed his hand and stage whispered, "She's pretty, Daddy." "Emma, what?" "She is. And she was nice. Not like those mean ladies at your work who ignore you." Out of the mouths of babes. "Come on, let's go make dinner." Over the following weeks, Marcus and Rachel kept running into each other at the park. It started to feel less like coincidence and more like something intentional, though neither of them acknowledged it directly. They'd talk while Emma played, discussing everything from city politics to their favorite books. Rachel had been through her own tragedy, a divorce 2 years ago that had left her questioning everything. She'd moved to the city for a fresh start, and somehow, Marcus found himself looking forward to their chance meetings more than he wanted to admit. At work, nothing changed. Victoria Sterling remained a distant, imperious figure who swept through the office like a force of nature, leaving disruption in her wake. The Meridian contract negotiations intensified, which meant longer hours for everyone except Marcus, who still left at 5 on the dot. He could feel the resentment from colleagues who stayed late, the unspoken judgment that he wasn't committed enough. Then came the company charity gala. It was an annual event, black tie mandatory, where Sterling Industries showcased its corporate philanthropy and schmoozed with potential clients. Marcus normally found excuses to skip it, but this year, Jason convinced him to attend. "Come on, man, Emma's at that sleepover anyway, you said so yourself. Get out of the house. Have a free dinner. Remind people you exist." So Marcus rented a tux that made him feel like an imposter and showed up at the Grand Riverside Hotel on a Saturday evening, already regretting his decision. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and beautiful people, the kind of crowd that made him acutely aware of his scuffed dress shoes and last season haircut. Victoria held court at the center of it all, draped in a silver gown that probably cost more than Marcus's annual salary. She moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting compliments and networking with ruthless efficiency. Marcus grabbed a glass of champagne and found a quiet corner, content to observe. That's when he saw her, Rachel, walking into the ballroom in a simple but elegant navy dress, her auburn hair swept up. She spotted him immediately, and her face broke into a genuine smile that made several nearby heads turn. "Marcus, I didn't know you'd be here. I work for Sterling Industries. My school is one of the charity recipients. They asked me to come represent the education program." She looked around the opulent room with mild amusement. "Quite the scene. Not your usual Saturday night. I prefer sweatpants and Netflix, honestly. Want to brave the fancy appetizers together." They ended up spending the entire evening talking, barely noticing when dinner was served or when the speeches began. Rachel made him laugh in a way he hadn't in years, and for the first time since Sarah died, Marcus felt like maybe there was life waiting on the other side of grief. They were standing near the bar, Rachel touching his arm while telling a story about a particularly chaotic field trip, when Marcus felt the temperature drop. Victoria Sterling had appeared beside them, her expression inscrutable. "Mr. Webb, I didn't expect to see you here." It was the first time she'd ever initiated conversation with him. Marcus felt Rachel stiffen slightly beside him, picking up on the tension. "Ms. Sterling, this is Rachel Morrison. She teaches at Westside Elementary." "How nice." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. She turned to Rachel. "I hope you're enjoying the evening. Sterling Industries takes its community partnerships very seriously. The work you do is certainly impressive," Rachel replied smoothly, though Marcus could hear the reservation in her voice. Victoria's gaze flicked between them, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "I wasn't aware you had a date, Mr. Webb. Rachel and I are friends. We met at the park." "How charming." Victoria's tone suggested it was anything but. "Well, enjoy your evening. Mr. Webb, I'd like to see you Monday morning. 9 sharp. Don't be late." She glided away, leaving Marcus with a sense of foreboding. Rachel waited until Victoria was out of earshot before speaking. "Is she always that warm and fuzzy?" That was her being pleasant. "You should see her during budget reviews. She looked at you differently, though. Like she was seeing you for the first time." Marcus shrugged. "Probably just surprised I own a tuxedo." But Rachel was right. Something had changed. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Victoria's office at exactly 9 o'clock. This time, she looked up immediately when he entered. "Sit down, Mr. Webb." He sat, trying to read her expression and finding it impossible. Victoria steepled her fingers, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "I've been reviewing your employment file. 3 years with this company. Consistently excellent performance reviews. Multiple critical saves that prevented significant financial losses. And yet you've never applied for a promotion, never angled for a better position. Why?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I have a daughter. She's my priority. The position I have now allows me to be there for her." "The single father. Yes, I saw that in your file. Your wife passed away 4 years ago. That must be difficult." The words sounded rehearsed, as if Victoria was unfamiliar with expressing sympathy. "The woman at the gala. The teacher. Is it serious?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "I don't see how that's relevant to." "Answer the question." "We're friends. We've been spending time together." Victoria leaned back in her chair, and for a moment, Marcus saw something unexpected in her expression. Vulnerability, maybe, or regret. "I'm going to tell you something I don't typically share," she said finally. "My father built this company, but he was never home. I barely knew him. He died when I was 16, and I inherited a business instead of a parent. I swore I'd do better, be different. Instead, I became exactly like him, obsessed with success, blind to everything else." She paused. "Seeing you at that gala, with someone looking at you like you matter, like you're more than your job title, it made me realize something." "What's that?" "That I've been running this company the way my father ran his life. And I've been treating my employees the way he treated his family, as tools to achieve a goal, not as human beings with their own stories and struggles." Victoria's voice softened. You saved this company millions of dollars, and I barely thanked you. You've been requesting that security upgrade for months, and I dismissed you without consideration. All because you leave at 5 to be there for your daughter." Marcus didn't know what to say. This wasn't the Victoria Sterling he knew, the Ice Queen, the corporate shark. "I'm making some changes," Victoria continued. "Starting with approving your security upgrade. Full budget, whatever you need. I'm also offering you a senior director position with a 40% raise and flexible hours. You can work from home when needed, adjust your schedule around your daughter. I want to retain good people, and I've been losing them because I couldn't see past my own ambition." "I don't understand. What changed?" "You did. Watching you at that gala, I saw someone who'd made different choices than I had. Someone who'd prioritized differently and seemed content, happy, even. That woman looked at you like you were the most important person in the room, not because of your title or your salary, but because of who you are. When was the last time someone looked at me that way?" Victoria's smile was sad. "I can't remember. Maybe never." "Ms. Sterling." "Victoria, if we're going to work together differently, let's start with that." Over the following months, Sterling Industries transformed. Victoria implemented flexible work policies, increased parental leave, and started actually listening to her employees. She still drove hard bargains and demanded excellence, but now there was humanity behind it, an understanding that the people working for her had lives beyond their cubicles. She and Marcus developed an unlikely friendship. Sometimes Victoria would join him in the break room, asking about Emma, sharing stories about her own lonely childhood. She attended Emma's school play, sitting in the back row and applauding loudly when Marcus's daughter took her bow. And Rachel became a constant presence in Marcus's life, and Emma's. They took things slowly, carefully, both of them carrying scars from loss. But gradually, family dinners became routine, park visits turned into weekend adventures, and Emma started asking when Rachel would officially move in. One evening, a year after the gala, Marcus and Rachel were cooking dinner together while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. "Thank you for reminding me what matters. Dinner with my mother tonight. First time in 3 years. Wish me luck." Rachel read over his shoulder and smiled. "She's really changed, hasn't she?" "We all have," Marcus replied, pulling her close. Emma looked up from her math problems and grinned. "Are you guys being mushy again?" "Maybe," Marcus laughed. "Is that okay?" "It's perfect, Daddy." And it was. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense. There were still hard days, still moments when grief surfaced or anxiety crept in. But it was perfectly real, perfectly human. Marcus had spent years being invisible, convinced that keeping his head down and surviving was enough. It took being seen, really seen, by Rachel to remember that he deserved more. And it took Victoria's transformation to understand that everyone, even the people who seem untouchable, are just trying to figure out how to live meaningful lives. The story didn't end with grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It ended with ordinary moments made extraordinary by genuine connection, with dinner table conversations and school plays and text messages from unlikely friends. It ended with Marcus understanding that being a good father didn't mean making himself small everywhere else, and that the right people would see him, value him, love him for exactly who he was. Victoria did land the Meridian contract, and the company flourished. But more importantly, she started building real relationships, with her employees, with her family, with herself. She never became warm, exactly, but she became human, and that was enough. As for Marcus and Rachel, they built something beautiful together, a blended life full of laughter and origami cranes and park visits that turned into forever. Emma got the family she'd been dreaming of, and Marcus got a second chance at happiness he'd thought was lost forever. Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen when someone finally sees us, and when we allow ourselves to be seen. Marcus had been invisible for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to matter. But love, real friendship, and unexpected grace had reminded him. Every person has value, every story matters, and sometimes the CEO needs to learn that lesson just as much as anyone else.